Carla Walker's case. In 1974, a 17-year-old high school cheerleader named Carla Walker was tragically killed, and her case remained unsolved for 46 years. Carla was a fun-loving and outgoing girl who was excited to attend her high school Valentine's Day dance in Fort Worth, Texas. She went to the dance with her boyfriend, Rodney McCoy, who was the quarterback of the school's football team. After the dance, Carla and Rodney hung out with friends, and later went to a bowling alley parking lot to spend some alone time. While they were sitting in the back seat of Rodney's car, a man suddenly opened the car door. Carla fell out, and the stranger pointed a gun at Rodney, threatening to kill him. Carla begged the man not to shoot Rodney, saying she would go with him instead. The man hit Rodney on the head, knocking him unconscious, and kidnapped Carla. When Rodney woke up, bleeding from his head, Carla was gone. He rushed to her house and told her parents what had happened. The police and Carla's father immediately started searching for her. 3 days later, Carla's body was found in a ditch near Lake Benbrook. She had been tortured, assaulted, and strangled. The police investigated several suspects, including Glenn McCurley, who lived near the bowling alley. McCurley had bought bullets for a gun that matched a magazine found at the crime scene. However, he told the police his gun had been stolen, and there wasn't enough evidence to prove he was involved. The case went cold, but investigators kept Carla's DNA evidence, hoping future technology could solve the crime. In 2019, new interest in the case led investigators to send DNA evidence from Carla's bra to a lab called Othram. The lab used advanced technology to create a DNA profile of the suspect. The DNA matched McCurley, who was now 77 years old. Investigators collected more DNA from McCurley's trash and confirmed it matched the DNA found on Carla's bra. In September 2020, McCurley was arrested and charged with Carla's murder. He initially denied knowing Carla, but later changed his story. McCurley claimed he had been drunk the night of the crime and saw Rodney hitting Carla. He said he pulled Carla into his car to save her, but admitted he made a mistake and hurt her. Carla's family is relieved that they finally know who killed her after 46 years, but they still want full justice for her. The case is moving forward, and more details are expected to come out during McCurley's trial. Fawn Cox. Occasionally when a murder is solved, it brings both a resolution as well as a reckoning. Sometimes the long-awaited answers end up being something you never expected. This was the case for the family of Fawn Cox. On July 26, 1989, 16-year-old Fawn Cox came home late after finishing Worlds of Fun in Kansas City. She normally worked until 11 p.m., and so it was not unusual for her family to not hear from her, as she often went directly to bed when she had to work the next day. Fawn was known to be a normal teenager, one who went to church and stayed out of any trouble. The next morning, Fawn's little sister, Felisa, heard Fawn's alarm going off within her room, but she wasn't getting up or turning it off. Felisa went in to rouse her sister and shake her awake, but instead she found her dead. Ominous music. Felisa remembered that she had been gone for a while by the time she had discovered her. Her mother Beverly also came into the room sure that Fawn simply had to still be sleeping. During the night, someone had entered Fawn's room through the window. She was assaulted and then strangled and left in her bedroom for her family to find. Her family noted that they hadn't heard anything alarming that night which would have indicated something was wrong. But the house was running loud air conditioners, which likely hid any sound. Although they did recall hearing the dog barking that night which sounded as though it was agitated, but because the animal was pregnant, it was explained away. Police were sure that the attack was targeted, and because the perpetrator chose Fawn's exact window and was able to remain undetected, it was clear to investigators that the killer probably knew Fawn. They had collected DNA evidence from the scene, but at the time lacked the technology to use it to find her killer. 3 teenagers were initially believed to be responsible for her death and were even charged, but there wasn't enough evidence at the time to convict them as they couldn't be definitively placed at the scene. One of the teens spent 8 months in jail for the crime, but as the case fell apart, the 3 teens were ultimately released, and the charges dropped. Crime Stoppers eventually joined the search for Fawn's killer. An enormous billboard with Fawn's face was put up along with a $10,000 reward for any tips that would lead to an arrest. But nothing was uncovered. As Fawn's case went cold, many within the police department were left feeling disturbed. A few had expected that whoever killed Fawn would strike again and then they would be able to catch the killer, but no one ever surfaced. Sergeant Benjamin Caldwell previously commented on the case's unsolved status, saying, "Whoever killed her either has never been charged with a felony or is no longer alive. People don't start killing and then quit and stay out of trouble, as if they fell off the face of the earth." But that is exactly what appeared to have happened. As for 31 years, Fawn's killer was never found. Her family never gave up, though, as Fawn's death haunted them for decades. They were determined that they would one day find her killer. And over the years, they hosted fundraisers to garner support for Fawn's case, to receive the advanced DNA testing that would name her killer. Her case was solved in 2020 through a partnership between Kansas City Police and the FBI. The advanced DNA testing needed was too expensive for the police department. And though Fawn's family offered to pay the bill, it was the FBI which paid for the analysis. It took only a few weeks to have the answers her family had been waiting for, but what they discovered was completely unexpected and shook them to their core. The testing revealed that Fawn's attacker and killer had been her own cousin. Donald Cox Jr. Cox died from an overdose in 2006. At first, the police refused to release Cox's name as he is deceased and cannot be charged, but Fawn's family came forward to the public with the news. As they had always spoken publicly about the case, it didn't appear right to them to withhold the conclusion because the truth was disturbing. Fawn's family had spoken openly about how painful the lack of answers was, but uncovering the truth adds another level of hardship for their closure. Fawn's sister Felisa commented, saying, "It's a relief there's closure. The answers aren't always what we are asking for, but there's closure." Christine Jessup's case is one of Canada's most tragic and infamous cold cases. For decades, her disappearance and murder haunted the nation. In 2020, the mystery was finally solved, but the resolution brought mixed feelings, as justice still seemed out of reach. On October 3, 1984, 9-year-old Christine was left home alone in Queensville, a small town near Toronto. Her mother and older brother, Kenny, went to visit Christine's father, Bob, who was in a detention center. Since Christine was very young, her mother decided not to take her to such a grim place. However, when they returned later that day, Christine was missing. Her mother immediately called the police, believing her daughter had been abducted. The community came together to search for Christine, but there was no sign of her for months. Despite their hope, tragedy struck on New Year's Eve, when Christine's body was found 31 miles from her home. She had been assaulted and stabbed. At first, the police had no leads. But in April 1985, less than a year later, they arrested Guy Paul Morin, Christine's next-door neighbor. Morin became a suspect because of his proximity to the Jessup home. Many people were relieved that a suspect had been caught, believing Christine's killer was finally behind bars. However, Morin's trial was full of complications. His first trial ended in a mistrial, and the legal battle dragged on for years. In 1992, 7 years after his initial arrest, Morin was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. But things took an unexpected turn. 18 months into his sentence, new evidence was found. DNA testing, which had advanced significantly since Christine's murder, proved that Morin could not have been her killer. In 1995, he was released from prison, completely cleared of the crime. The wrongful conviction led to an inquiry to investigate how the police mishandled the case. It revealed that in their eagerness to solve the crime, the police made several errors. As a result, Morin received $1.25 million in compensation. The case also led to reforms in how Canadian police handle murder investigations. Even after Morin was exonerated, the case went cold. A special task force interviewed hundreds of men and collected DNA samples, but no match was found. By 1998, the investigation was disbanded, leaving Christine's family uncertain if they would ever know the truth. Finally, in October 2020, a breakthrough came thanks to advancements in genetic genealogy. A lab in the U.S. analyzed DNA evidence from the crime scene and matched it to a suspect, Calvin Hoover. Hoover, who was 28 at the time of Christine's death, had been a friend of the Jessup family. Shockingly, Hoover had even participated in the search for Christine, attended her funeral, and visited the family afterward. However, he was never a suspect during the original investigation. Sadly, Hoover could not be brought to justice, as he had died by suicide in 2015. Christine's family was relieved to finally know the truth, but heartbroken that Hoover would never face the consequences of his actions. Morin, the man wrongfully accused, expressed his relief for the Jessup family and hoped they could find peace. The police investigation into Hoover's life continues. Detectives are looking into his past to determine if he was involved in other crimes. Hoover's family, including his ex-wife and children, are cooperating with the investigation despite their shock and devastation. Christine's father, Bob, has said he doesn't remember much about Hoover's role in their lives. He struggles to understand why Hoover committed such a horrific act. While the case now has some answers, many questions remain. Christine's family has closure in knowing her killer's identity, but they will never see him face justice. This bittersweet ending leaves Canada reflecting on the pain of Christine's story and the importance of justice done right.